Welcome everybody again. I want to reiterate the thanks for joining in on this presentation. That's really wonderful thing about working with Zoom. I get to be with you all this morning, even though I am presently in Madison, Wisconsin. So what a pleasure to be with you all, and maybe someday in person, face to face. So I have lots of things to share with you. I'm very excited to share with you program mission and vision and features of Journey North, the range of projects that are under the Journey North umbrella. I'll talk a little bit about the major threats to the migratory species that our volunteers track with Journey North. And of course, as Rebecca mentioned, the key species that we're going to be talking about are monarch and the monarch and milkweed project that Journey North stewards along every year. And then I'll focus at the very end with telling the migration story, how we share our results that are the results by the volunteers themselves back to the community. So just to get us all on the same page here, Journey North began in 1994. It's a crowdsourced participatory citizen science program that invites people from across North America to help track wildlife migration and seasonal change. So it is one of the older citizen science programs around. It was acquired, it was a nonprofit for 25 years and was recently acquired by the UW-Madison Arboretum in, 2019 years. The pandemic made year counting for me a little difficult for some reason. But in any event, that's when I joined. So I still consider myself a little bit of a new person to Journey North, but have just enjoyed, again, these sorts of opportunities to interact with people from Canada, the US, and Mexico. So the vision for Journey North is that individuals, young and old, acting as ambassadors for migratory species, can create a community of action, a kind of Earth citizenship driving conservation. So I'm calling this out a little bit to clarify what we mean by citizen and citizen science. I know that there's a lot of discussion about community science and citizen science and what to call these participatory science programs. And for Journey North, and personally for me, our vision is that we're all part of we're all citizens of Earth, and that we all play a role in creating more information and more knowledge about our natural world. So we are a community of action. So the mission and goals of Journey North is to foster scientific understanding, to raise awareness of various aspects of migration, and to support environmental education. So today I'm going to focus really on these first two and how we foster particularly scientific understanding of migration. Unfortunately, I don't have a huge amount of time during this session to talk about environmental education, but I encourage you all to go to the Journey North website, where there is a wealth of both education for K through 13, teachers and students, and also just general outreach material. Highlighting just three key features of Journey North is that we're really, of course, as a crowdsourced participatory science program, we want the crowd to participate. We want everyone to feel welcome. And so Journey North has developed protocols or methods that are kind of simple to use and to pick up and go out in nature and understand what we're wanting people to submit information on. We also have an online registration and data entry system And the third is the open access to data. So this is something that I think all participatory science programs embrace, is the notion that our volunteer collected data should be available to our volunteers and also to the wider science community. Because we want more eyes on the data means more analysis, means better understanding, in our case, of migration patterns. So here, I'm going to run through a little bit of the key program species. So of course, we talked a little bit about monarch and milkweed. So that's one of our flagship projects, of course, and it's right there in on our logo, the wonderful monarch butterfly. But there are other species, and sometimes people don't know about it. So I always like to describe all the species we cover. So hummingbirds, all the migratory species of hummingbirds, ruby-throat, rufous, broad-tailed, black-chin, annas, costas, and calliope. That skipped one, I think it did. We also, our volunteers can participate in our red-winged blackbird migration project, our common loon and ice-out and bald eagles. Of course, those of you who are tuning in from Texas, ice-out probably is not one that you would particularly participate in. But again, loons have a southward migration too, and can be found in some southern states like Texas and in Tennessee and North Carolina. Other species that we cover are the Baltimore and Bullock's oriole, robin, American robin, and the barn swallow. So I just wanted to highlight some of the major threats to migratory species. Of course, those of you tuning in probably are already hugely familiar with these threats from pesticide and herbicide use that impact not only the insects, of course, the monarch butterfly, but also the birds that rely on insects as a major protein source. Habitat loss, so logging and wildfires, the availability of milkweed, nectar-rich plants, pollinator gardens, and what were, of course, the biggest challenges, these severe weather events that we're all experiencing, especially this summer out west with the wildfires, and of course, climate change. And I don't want to spend too much time because the list can just keep going. But of course, I have to mention a few additional aspects for the monarch butterfly. At the end of last year, the Fish and Wildlife Service found that the monarch was warranted inclusion in the endangered species listing, but it was unable to place it on that list in part because there were higher priority actions that needed to happen. So it's sad that they weren't able to list the monarch, but it's also sad that there are so many other species of concern. So anyway, it's still an issue under consideration. And I'll just mention two other things that are pertinent to this slide. So as perhaps some of you know, there are two major populations of monarchs. One Western population that overwinters along the California coast and breeds inland. And then the Eastern population that migrates to Mexico. And the Western population, the colonies are distributed along that California coast, sometimes in very, very small areas. And indeed, that population has declined precipitously, and that this graph always kind of sends goosebumps because it really is a population in crisis. And this graphic shows that they're 94% decline. For the Eastern population, again, that overwinters in central Mexico, that population also has declined. So there are population estimates that the World Wildlife Fund puts out every year based on, they do a calculation in the overwintering sites. And this past year, there was a 26% decrease from the previous year of the area that monarchs are present in the various colonies in the Monarch Biosphere Reserve. So that actually is not just a one-off, one-off occurrence, that there actually has been a downward trend in terms of the overwintering population counts. So from that 8-year average, 1993 to 2000, there was approximately 8 hectares of area covered by the monarchs overwintering roosts in Mexico. And from 2011 to 2020, that average had declined to 2.6. So it's a troubling stats. Unfortunately, it's not unique to the monarch butterflies. The Fish and Wildlife Service just listed the Allens, Costas, Calliope, broad-tailed, and rufous as a species of conservation concern. The rufous, in a study, found that 60% of the population of rufous has declined since 1974. And even the ubiquitous, at least here in the north, of the red-winged blackbird, it also has seen a decrease in the population, 30% since during this period, 1966 to 2014. So, I wouldn't be in this business if I didn't firmly believe that we all can make a difference to conserve and protect migratory species. And indeed, I've had a number of years of my career has been in citizen science, managing citizen science projects, and hearkening back to that vision again and again. I have found that the volunteers who participate in all the citizen science programs and projects I have had the honor to manage have really become the voice of the species of which they are tracking and monitoring. And so it's not only becoming ambassadors in being that voice, but also doing actions on the land. And of course, monitoring, which I'm here to encourage you to participate in Journey North. So I think I firmly believe that the volunteer collected data and the work of our volunteers, our Journey North volunteers, are making a difference. So Journey North volunteers track observable events in the annual life cycle of plants and animals. And it really is to reveal the journey, the migration journey. And it's not just a snapshot in time. It's, as you can see, 1994 to the present day is a long expanse of data that we're collecting. And so one can start to assess trends over time, especially with projects that extend over a 10-year period. So I'll focus in on our monarch and milkweed project. I could look at these photos all day long. This is one of my favorite, the purple and the orange. So the life cycle events are pretty amazing. I come from the water quality world, so I was fascinated with aquatic insects and the metamorphoses they undergo from water creatures to airborne creatures. And likewise, the monarch butterfly has a very fascinating life cycle story. The monarch butterfly, adult monarch female, lays eggs as teeny as a little pinhead, usually on the underside of a milkweed plant. That egg metamorphoses, it changes and grows, and the larva stage lasts from 11 to 18 days. The larva eats its way out of that small egg and uses the egg as a first boost of protein, and then a milkweed is the primary sole food source for a growing caterpillar. It grows from 1 centimeter to 5 centimeters. And then over time, of course, the larva then forms a chrysalis, which grows, metamorphoses into the monarch butterfly in 8 to 14 days. The female monarch can lay on average 700 eggs over its lifetime. And of course, it's the monarch butterfly, I think, it's one of the journey through generations, I guess I would call it, because the migratory monarchs that first arrive in Texas, you were at the cutting edge there, breed immediately. That's the first generation. That first generation then continues the flight northward in the northward migration journey. Second generation then comes and continues that northward journey. The third generation likewise. And it's actually the fourth generation that returns, fourth and fifth generation sometimes, returns to Mexico. So of course, it's the super generation. It's still somewhat of an incredible life mystery as to how this fourth or fifth generation of monarchs know how to return to that one place in Mexico. And it's lovely in this day and age to still have mysteries, although there's a lot of research going on to better analyze and assess how that fourth generation knows where to go in Mexico to overwinter. But there are events in the migration also. So it's really the spring first arrivals, the fall return, and I'll talk a little bit more about this as I go forward here. So again, the Journey North really is event-based monitoring. So it's all about in the spring, that first arrival of monarchs. So if you are fortunate to be in Texas or tuning in from Texas, you most likely will witness the arrival of the monarch butterfly that has overwintered in the Monarch Biosphere Reserve in Mexico. Further on up, as far as we are here in Wisconsin, that might be the third generation, we will say, is our first monarch arrival. So, but it's still our first in our area. We also ask our volunteers to help us track milkweed emergence. So that's the first budding of milkweed, the first egg seen of the year, of that spring period, and the first larva. So that's our spring focus. During the summer, we ask our volunteers to continue to report monarch sightings, monarch eggs, and monarch larvae, where they are, and this is to get at more of a distribution of the population over the landscape, and where milkweed, and if they see an adult monarch nectaring on I ask our volunteers to report the species that they are nectaring upon. Again, giving us a sense of where monarchs are and what habitats they're relying on over the wide landscape. The fall protocols are similar. We ask people to continue to report on the presence of monarch butterflies, eggs, larvae, milkweed, and those nectaring resources. But in the fall, we ask our volunteers to also report if they see monarch roosts. So as the night falls, as during the fall migration with cooling temperatures in the evening, monarchs do amass, and also these peak migration events, and they cluster, sometimes in very large roosts, along the northward or the southward migration route. So we ask people to report roosts and also these peak migration events, which can actually, there's some hotspots that people can see hundreds of monarchs flying directionally in a directional flight to the overwintering sites in Mexico. I just wanted to add one little bit here too. We do have a targeted project. It was started last winter and now we're going to continue it this winter. So it's really from November to March through March. There are some indications that not all monarchs are now migrating to Mexico, to the overwintering sites there, colonies, but that some monarchs are overwintering in Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and of course, Florida. Florida is a different kind of case because there has been a known overwintering population there. But now we're really trying to gather information to really figure out what's going on along the Gulf states and South Carolina, North Carolina, and Georgia. So I will put out a plea for people to participate all year round in Journey North, and especially during this targeted period in the winter. We need to know, especially information on milkweed and nectaring resources and clustering. We're not calling them roosts because usually the clusters are much smaller during the winter months. So this is a targeted project just launched. I will mention that during the winter months, Journey North doesn't go quiet either in terms of reporting from the Monarch Biosphere Reserve. This is a place that many of us will never have an opportunity to go to, although I'm really hoping someday I could get down there to see this wonderful site of the monarch overwintering sites in Mexico. But we do have contributor writers who just take wonderful photos, and they tell us a little bit about what the happenings going on in the villages surrounding the Monarch Biosphere Reserve and some of the challenges that people there, the local communities there, have to protect this wonderful resource. And it's a great way to share our common goal to protect and conserve monarchs, because this is a trinational species and we all need to work together. And so this is their reporting and sharing news from Mexico, I think brings us a little closer to building that community of action, hopefully. So at this point in my presentation, I just wanted to tell you a little bit about what the volunteer-generated data can possibly tell us. There are many publications available that researchers have used Journey North data, especially with the Monarch and Milkweed Project. So I'm not going to regale you with kind of those. One can look online to find a library of those publications, but just generally speaking, the fall migration data, especially the roost information, shows us, well, one, the location of those roosts to better assess habitat needs, right, during the fall migration. It also, tells us the pattern of the fall migration, and they're really, in this graphic here, shows that during the southward migration, there are really two flyway zones, one right down the center of the United States and one along the East Coast, and that hugs the mountains, the Appalachian Mountains right there. And I will put a plug in for Texas. Of course, you may already know this. You are really almost like a little funnel here, because both the Eastern Flyway and the Central Flyway, the monarchs flying south, curve down and funnel through Texas right there. And so this is just a quick graphic of what happens there. And again, there's some areas that are heavily trafficked by monarchs, and I'm sure some of you are fortunate enough to be in those areas. And so we would love for you to participate, especially in Journey North. So on to the spring, what some of our spring monarch data, first arrival data tells us is, first of all, the date of when that first arrival is. to begin to, the question is that date changing over time, especially in the face of climate change, drought, in logging in Mexico? What are the dynamics there, and how is it impacting the migration timing? So it can tell us that, but also our milkweed, our volunteer generated milkweed first emergence data we can begin to assess, is milkweed going to be available when the monarchs arrive from Mexico and on through their northward migration to lay eggs. And so I'm sure everybody was aware in Texas with that late awful winter storm you had in early spring, I guess would be for you down there. We were all wondering, is milkweed going to be available, when our nectar-rich plant's going to be available? And unfortunately, I don't think that this year is going to be the anomaly. So we always will have to be asking this question. So lining up the two, and these are interactive maps from Journey North. We have over 50 interactive maps that provide real-time data, feedback, visualizations to anybody and everyone. So you can see the progression, this northward progression of monarchs for sightings as it goes through that central part and along the coast here. And then by May 25th, this is when we start seeing the sightings from our Canadian neighbors. The data can also be used to do some targeted work with especially the agricultural community. There is what we call here the pesticide gauntlet. You can see that monarchs travel through a lot of agricultural areas that use glyphosate. Always a little challenge for me to say that word, but so we, in a number of places, especially here in Wisconsin, there's something called the Wisconsin Monarch Collaborative, where the agricultural community is a partner in trying to at least reduce the use of pesticides and herbicides and create habitat within agricultural areas. So this kind of information helps just visibly show the need for this kind of work. And of course, habitat, this just shows you some of the areas that have been converted. We've lost a lot of prairie and wetlands. And so crops, soybeans and corn are dominant in a lot of the zone that the monarchs migrate through. And so the milkweed has disappeared from the landscape. And so this just, again, is a visible way to say, hey, we need to all work together to create habitat, especially in plant milkweed. Keep going. So this, I'll make one pitch here. We're in the throes of the International Monarch Monitoring Blitz. This is a collaborative effort. You can see all the different organizations down below, where we're asking people to submit their monarch and milkweed sightings. And the really cool thing about this effort is that during this 1 week, all that data will be shared with the Tri-National Monarch Knowledge Network from the back end. So it's almost like more bang for your buck, if you would, that your data will join all these other organizations, the volunteer generated data from these other organizations to this central data repository. It takes a lot of work at the back end to do this. So this is a great opportunity to really focus our time and make this happen. So please join us. And this is a little flyer we have on our website as to what you can report during this week. The other, it's not really, well, it's a project per se, but it's a way to perhaps encourage you to submit or to plant a pollinator garden. I'm sure most of you on this webinar are already doing so, but to enter your garden in one of our interactive maps, our habitat map, because again, this is a way for us all to see ourselves as a larger community. And while we are planting one small patch in our backyard, it's really part of a whole quilt of habitat. And I think this this visualization helps us feel like our small part is part of a larger effort. And then we have this just new yard sign, so you can print that up and put it in your garden and share that photo with your location of your garden on our habitat map. Lastly, I'm getting to the end here. So it's really important to me as a manager of citizen science to make sure that we provide information back to our volunteers. So during the spring and the fall migration for each one of our active projects, we write news updates. So we have about 6 news updates that go out weekly. This one, the featured here is for our songbirds. And the way that we tell our story about migration is to talk about the front line, letting people know where species are at a particular week, so that everybody can be on the lookout and in the know. But also it is to allow the voices of our volunteers to be highlighted. So we share the news that is in the words of our volunteers. And again, it's the joy that we're trying to convey that only the volunteers themselves can really convey best. So it's a way that we tell the story in addition to our interactive maps. Anybody and everybody can go on our website and read these updates, but when you register with Journey North, you can also subscribe to particular news updates from particular projects and receive those as an email in your inbox. That is it. Of course, we're going to have some questions and answer period right now, but please feel free to share, to contact me if you have questions after the presentation. This is the general website for Journey North, so it's just journeynorth.org, where you can go right there and register and start submitting at any time. So Rebecca, I think I will stop sharing my screen. Is that okay? Oh, I don't hear you, Rebecca.
I'm double muted here, so thank you. That's totally fine. Thanks. Thank you for telling me. So I wonder if there is any chance, because we have a couple of questions related to that, any chance for us to see the actual page where people have to go and register and how they will register? That might give them an idea.
Yes.
Please.
We could try that. I tried to reduce any too much online stuff here.
I hear you. Yes.
And for sure show both the maps and
so they get a little bit familiar how
yes.
the website works.
So let me come
we'll
over
try that
here.
We can try that.
See. All right, so everybody should be seeing the Journey North website.
Yes.
So this front page has all the projects. You may see a few others that I did not have time to talk about, and especially some of the educational programs. Again, time is limited, but you register, hitting registration. The registration form is right here. So it's fairly findable. We are in the midst of doing a website redesign, so this will get even better and simpler as time goes by. Let's see here. You still seeing my screen? The website? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. To submit, you go to sightings. And of course, this has me already logged in. You can select your project. So I won't pick hummingbirds. I will hit monarch butterfly, and then you can continue. You can move the location dot, or if you know the Latin long, you can enter it in down here, or you can put a street address. Now, Journey North does follow protect privacy, so when I flip over to the maps, you'll see that the zoom setting is doesn't allow people to get into your backyard, in other words. There's a drop-down menu where you can enter in what event, life cycle event that you're reporting on. You can submit a photo, date, how many, and then comments. Comments are always welcome and actually very useful, that provide context to anyone's sighting. It's sometimes hard with, for example, our hummingbirds, they're really hard to catch a photo. And so if in the comments, people are indicating that they used the color and kind of an ID process, then it allows us to feel more confident in that particular sighting. So comments are really, really important. And then you hit submit. Whatever report, let's see, can you go over here? Yeah, you place is immediately posted to our website. So this might, I don't know if this is going to crash the system, because right now, some of these maps, we have a lot of information coming in. So here is the first arrival of monarchs. And you can see that there is this timeline toggle that you can go and actually go through time, back through time, to see when monarchs arrived at a particular location of interest. And this button here, this view data, if you're still seeing my screen, is the way to access the results. So again, part of our guiding feature or principle is that we want everyone to have access to our volunteer submitted data. So this is a place where everybody can go and access that data. Let's see, I think that are the key points here. Again, we're really doing the website redesign work too. So as time goes by, this will just become more straightforward. The Monarch page will take you to our news, the news just for the Monarchs. So this is the most recent news about the Monarch Blitz. For all news, go to all news too. Lots of things to explore here.
That's great. So if people join the Monarch Blitz, will they report directly to Journey North? They can go and report to
Yeah.
Journey North.
So
That's
again,
great.
you have to register first,
right.
And then you can go ahead and submit sightings. And right along, if you look here, there is this instructional flyer as to what we're looking for during this week of the Blitz.
That's really good. Yeah, so guys, if you are outside or outdoors doing some gardening or just going for a hike here in Texas or wherever you are, please make sure to register. If you see a monarch, please just report that to Journey North. And the amazing part is that now they are gathering the information throughout the whole year, which it's going to help us even more to understand the monarch migration. monarch ecology and how they also use the different habitats throughout their migration pathway and the breeding habitats as well. Um, yeah, so thank you so much, Nancy. This is great. Yeah, so we have another question. It from the first question was from Bobette, and then we have one more from Kim Conroe. Can videos be submitted?
Can you say that again?
Can videos, like if somebody is
Oh,
recording a
yes.
monarch, can they?
Yeah. So right now, we don't have an easy way to do that. If, for example, you have taken a video and posted it to your YouTube channel, you can put that link into the comments section. When we're going to have a mobile friendly app, hopefully at the beginning of next year, and that will have a actual link where you can place your video. But for now, you can place that video in the comments, that link in the comment section, and it's very much welcome. Those videos are very much welcome.
So I have a question, Nancy, because I'm quite puzzled about it. This is the first year that in July here in Texas, in my garden, we have uh, uh, at least the 5 different species of native milkweed in our garden. We're very lucky to be able to have that many species. But the funny part is that we found just at the beginning of July 4 monarch eggs, of which 3 were able, or at least that we were able to see them to turn into a chrysalis. And just yesterday, one of them flew away, and the other one is almost ready to leave. But what totally puzzles me is that I'm seeing monarchs during the summer here, which it's just really rare. At this point, normally this time of the year, we don't see any more monarchs. We assume that they should be like way up north. So have you received any other monarch sightings regarding monarchs staying in Texas, around Texas?
Yeah, and those are the kind of questions that we can explore kind of. It's hard to do it in real time to make
Right.
Assessments of what is actually happening. And I also get the kind of on the other side of the coin question of, we have so many milkweeds and we're not seeing any eggs. So I really encourage people to, it's really the recording of data over time where we can kind of begin to assess trends. We are still seeing, to your question, there are submissions in Texas, continuous. So again, you know, what's happening, it's still too soon to tell, but that's why it's really important to submit your sightings to and
Right.
organizations.
Yeah. And actually, I will do that. I will enter the data too. I will make sure to do that. But I'm really curious, and I have my own theories. But I can wait to see more data coming, and then we can start sharing and discussing what's happening. But I have my own theories at this point of what's happening.
And again, back to that community of action and the telling of the migration story and the asking of questions. So like you, many of our volunteers have really excellent questions. And so I always encourage people to place those questions in the comment section, because those potentially could be great research questions for scientists and researchers who use the Journey North data. Right. So, you know, what you're observing and the questions that you might have, I encourage people always to place those in the comment section.
I will do
that participation piece.
Right. Sure. Thank you. So there's a question which I'm trying to get to that. Brianna, I'm not really sure if I'm understanding your question. If you would like to elaborate a little bit more, if it is related to the yard signs, Shell is asking you guys to contact her directly. next week, so she can work with you all on that. But if it's something different, please give me a little bit more of
Oh,
information
the
so
sign,
we can
yes.
ask her.
So
Yeah.
the sign is actually on our website.
Okay.
There's a link, and I can include that and send that to you all, and then you can send it out to your community there. But you can just print that sign up and place it in your garden. Yeah, unfortunately, the Arboretum doesn't have any way to produce those yard signs and sell them or distribute them from here. So we're just making it available. And again, for some folks, they like the yard signs, and it's a way to kind of promote the idea of creating that native pollinator habitat. Other people don't want to put any yard signs up, which is fine. So it's there for anybody and everybody to use.
Okay. Thank you. So, Vicky, this is the first year I've seen monarchs using Asclepias tuberosa in my yard, ignoring the other native species, laying in July, as you said. Yeah, and actually, Vicky, it's true. That's what happened in our garden too. They went for the tuberosa. Actually, no, they went for the emerald, which is a rare species first. Then they had a little bit of cisotes, and then when they finished what we had, then they macerated the the tuberosa. So it's I guess, but I'm glad they are using tuberosa, as you know, and that will take me to one of our questions, so I can answer that. Definitely, we encourage for us to use the native milkweeds. That's what we do. Thank you, Nancy. And Cheryl, you had a question about it, and I sent you, and I will share with everyone here on our in the chat. Please read this article. It's just really, really important. We beg you guys to do your best to use native milkweeds. There are a lot of concerns in factual data that are proving that tropical milkweed, which is not a native species to the US and not even to Mexico, is causing more harm than helping the monarchs. So we really encourage you to make sure that you do your best to find native milkweeds. Some people say that it's really hard to grow them, that it's not easy. Please check with us, because in August or September, we will have a special webinar. And actually, Kim Conroe, who's one of our attendees today, she will be one of our presenters, and she's amazing. She's from the Native Plant Society of Texas. And we will be teaching you guys to do gardening for monarchs and many other pollinators using native plants. And during that webinar, the workshop, you will learn how to grow your own native milkweed. And once you have the right recipe, you can do it. And it's just really important. One of the biggest concerns with native, tropical milkweed is that the spread of the protozoa of Resistis electrocera, or OE. And please stay tuned as well, because we will be releasing a blog from one volunteer in Houston who learned in the hard way that tropical milkweed was causing a lot of damage. So she is telling her whole story, and it's really, really moving. So
I'm really glad that you mentioned both of those things. So the targeted overwintering study I mentioned along the Gulf states and into Georgia and South Carolina and North Carolina. So one of our partners is the University of Georgia, Sonia Althauser, who also manages Monarch Health. So, on two fronts, we're curious to gather more information on where monarchs are and what milkweed is present. So if indeed this question of the tropical milkweed as kind of a deterrent or an enticer that's keeping monarchs from completing the migration, the more information we gather on that, the better off we are. And also on kind of the monarch health side of things, what's
That
happening
is,
with
yeah,
that population that does not continue the migration and overwinters. And then on the roost side, are there structures available for monarchs to cluster during the evening hours and rest? So are they breeding? There are a lot of questions. We've
right.
got
Yes. No, it's true. We're learning still about what's happening in the overwintering habitat as well. And
yes,
yeah, a couple of years ago, someone from the reserve, actually, she was the director of the reserve at that time, sent us a photo of a monarch laying eggs on one of the milkweeds that they had at the reserve. And it's a native milkweed, but it's interesting. So, but I guess that has to do as well with Karen Oberhauser wrote in that journal paper about as soon as monarchs see milkweed, they start laying eggs. It's just like
yes,
diapause stops and they do it. So that's the main concern, as you said, with tropical milkweed.
right.
And also, I remember, goodness, or is slipping out of my mind his name, Lincoln Brower. Lincoln, how could I forget his name? He I remember him mentioning and being so worried about tropical milkweed and saying what's going to happen with that plant is that it's going to stop the migration of the monarch. The monarch is going to start feeling so comfortable in one specific place that they're going to stay there. And another issue with that, guys, is that the gene flow stops as well. So you will start seeing the monarchs start uh, born, they are born with deformations, and we don't want that as well. So please
Yeah,
be
and we
very careful
definitely,
using monarch.
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead,
And I
Nancy.
see, yeah, I was just gonna go through one thing while we're doing a little bit of a warning message here.
Yes.
I see, was it Kimmy who mentioned that she reared some monarch eggs, and so the only thing to mention on that, Kimmy, is just to put a little bit of a warning on rearing monarchs. So I'm sure she may even know this already. Rearing in small numbers for educational purposes is lovely to do. A lot of classrooms actually do that too, to just show the whole metamorphosis. But it's there's evidence that captive reared is not a good way to protect the monarch population. It's more the habitat, planting milkweed, and that captive reared monarchs can be more susceptible to OE. So there is also a monarch joint venture fact sheet on that if you want to look into that. And if you're in California too, there are new regulations out for handling monarchs that I'm not as familiar with because it's a recent
Yeah,
recent
that's, yeah,
permitting
you're right.
process that's required. So
Yes.
just things to keep in mind, Kimmy.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for mentioning that, Nancy. And we know, you know, that all of us have our heart in the right place, that we would love to help the monarch and make sure that the monarch survives and the populations increase in the years to come. It's just a matter of us to know what's the best way for us to truly help them instead of harming them. So and we all are learning together here. So I'm so glad we're having this conversation, and we truly appreciate that you all are sharing with all of us what your efforts are, and I hope we can have more conversations in the future about what the best ways to help the monarch are. And one thing that we say always, and I'm sure Nancy will agree with me, is create habitat, have a nice garden, provide nectars, native nectars, provide native milkweed, and monarchs know what to do, you know.
Yes.
Once you have the place, they will come. So that's the best thing that we can do for
Yeah.
them.
And it doesn't
Anyways,
matter how big, you know,
right.
again, you don't have to have a huge, I have a very, very, very small little postage stamp yard in the back here, and it's just every place and any place. And I do recognize that some folks have difficulty, especially in housing housing developments that may have stricter regulations. But again, it gets to the ambassador piece. So you can be the change agent in that community and just promote a little bit of milkweed, perhaps, and then it can always grow in the future to a larger area.
Yeah, that is correct. Nancy, it has been great having you here, and I look forward to having you back as well, and talking now about hummingbirds, which are as well very, very important pollinators. And we would love to hear what Journey North is doing about. And I encourage you all, again, if you see monarchs during this time, please remember that this week is the Monarch Blitz. And it'll be great if you can help us to gather more information. The more information, the more data we have, the better we will be able to understand the monarch ecology and biology, and we all can help. So it's just amazing. It's perfect time to have this webinar and this information, Nancy. Thank you so much. If you guys don't have any more questions, I think we will let you go. And we so much appreciate your time on a Saturday morning, Nancy and everyone. It's been great, really, really good.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you next time.
Next time.